Greetings. Do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law. I'm Lexi Eve, and welcome back to another Magick Without Tears video. Today we're diving straight into letter C from the introduction section. Let's begin. This letter starts, quote, April 30th, 1943. Cara Sora, do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law. Thank you for your long letter of no date, but received 2 days ago. End quote. Really quick, just note the mention of no date. To Crowley and a student, in AA it's mandatory that all students date all formal correspondences, especially when it's written form. While most digital formats, they date automatically. This rule may be lax in such formats, but with handwritten letters, and especially journals, dating your letters, your correspondences, is mandatory. Quote, I'm very sorry you are still feeling exhausted. I am not too good myself, for I find this weather very trying. I will answer your various points as best I can. I am arranging to send you the official papers connected with the OTO, but the idea that you should meet other members first is quite impossible. Even after affiliation, you would not meet anyone unless it were necessary for you to work in cooperation with them. I am afraid you still got the idea that the great work is a tea party. Contact with other students only means that you criticize their hats and then their morals, and I am not going to encourage this. Your work is not anybody else's, and undirected chatter is the worst poisonous element in human society. End quote. Let me explain the above. He is sending Mackie OTO papers and says immediately after that she cannot meet nor work with other members. So, to be clear, he's not referring to meeting OTO members, but AA members. OTO, like Freemasonry, or even the Golden Dawn to an extent, have social components, the formers being mostly social orders, and the latter having teaching but also being a fraternity, meaning interaction is one of the primary functions. But in AA, you're supposed to know only your teacher and your student when you get one, and that is all. But this is only up to a certain point. There's definitely a leadership structure within AA, but that is usually reserved for members of the second order of the RC, and such interaction is strictly formal, pertaining to duties within the order such as cancellarius, imprimatur, praemonstrator, and even a treasurer sometimes. It just happens to be unfortunate that the way Crowley wrote that sentence, he mentions giving her OTO papers, and in the same sentence, he then immediately responds to her wish to meet other AA students. AA is segregated for a good reason. In the Golden Dawn, Crowley saw two things which needed to be avoided. The first was clickiness. People make friends, form a subgroup, and then exclude others from their friendship. This isolates them, and basically goes against fraternity, and interacting with people you may otherwise not have, which can help you grow. Such behavior makes it difficult for those excluded to participate, while also making it hard for those who are in the clique to grow by reaching out to someone that they wish to avoid. It also breeds popularity contests. The second one is that popularity in a sense. People who were favored for sucking up to those in the cliques would then be initiated faster than those who were not part of the in-group. Alternatively, people who had more wealth were favored for their money, and even if they didn't do their grade work, were sometimes giving degrees just by paying for them. Crowley wanted to squash all of this. Initiatory groups like the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn and AA exist for people to perform the great work under supervision and to take initiations. Buying degrees without earning them is reprehensible. People then get titles they did not earn and have yet to work on their egos. Those titles then begin to work on their egos. They get a collection of titles and a swollen head and become abusive sometimes. Other times, simply arrogant. Even should none of that happen, AA Crowley determined to be primarily about doing the great work and then guiding humanity, and that's it. Dinner parties are fun and good, but not what the great work is supposed to be about. Crowley ended up head of OTO and decided long ago that it was supposed to be a social order which introduces people to the Lima, and then AA trains them as magicians undertaking the great work. It's unfortunate only a small fraction of OTO members to date have ever truly taken up the great work in that sense. but that's neither here nor now. AA, as such, has no interaction for new students, and only duty for the higher-ranking members, as I mentioned those few job examples just a moment ago. Now, if you've not heard of those terms, or just don't know what they mean, these are brief explanations of those several jobs that I mentioned in the AA structure. Cancellarius is a chancellor. They could have many duties, but most commonly what they attend to is secretarial. They are the one who answers emails sent by students who are requesting examination to become a probationer. They might also deal with legal matters, or in acquiring legal aid. They might also deal with political matters, though concerning AA at present, I'm not sure what that would look like. Perhaps at present they would deal with such things as advocating publicly on behalf of AA if ever there were laws that they wished to propose, either in a city, state, or federal level, which would help the order. Things such as religious rights laws or proposals to Congress or City Council. Next job, Praemonstrator. The word itself is Latin for professor. In the Golden Dawn, they were responsible for teaching members either verbally or through issuing manuscripts. They may also assign others to do this. When a woman holds the office, she is known as the Praemonstratrix. Next job, imprimatur. They deal with literature primarily. They would get books printed, so like the Equinox, for example, or the Holy Books. In AA, every official book is stamped with a class of A through E, and is then signed off by usually 3 or more members of the second and third orders. The imprimatur is responsible for getting those signatures and then printing and distributing the books accordingly. Last, treasurer. They deal with money, though I'm not sure how common that is today. Sometimes money is an issue for the order and requires oversight. When books were being published for students, those books cost to be printed, and students paid their instructor for the books, and that money went to their treasurer. Also, AA can receive donations. While no member of the order may take money for their teachings, the order itself can take money. That money gets put towards acquiring a space for several initiations, such as the Dominus Liminis, and perhaps even the Ritual of the Seven Kings, which I'm not sure has ever been done, but it is something that the AA can do as a group. Further, donated money may be used for books or robe insignia in advance, so that students do not have to wait to purchase them, that they are stored safely until needed later on. So that addresses all that. Let's continue. Quote, when you talk of the actual record of the being called Jesus Christ, I don't know what you mean. I am not aware of the existence of any such record. I know a great many legends, mostly borrowed from previous legends of a similar character. End quote. Okay, so I've not really talked about Jesus at all on this channel. Let's do that now and move forward. I hold that there was no historical Jesus. Even the name Yahashua is merely the divine name Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh with the Shin in its midst, signifying the 4 elements made conscious by the Spirit right in the middle of it. Shin is fire, but it also can be spirit. If you don't know, every Hebrew letter has an astrological, like zodiac, planet, or element attributed directly to it. So Shin is fire and spirit. Yod-Heh-Shin-Vav-Heh is also merely pentagrammaton, a glyph of a man enlightened. The Jews were not waiting for a Messiah according to Kabbalah. No, each and every person who reaches a state of enlightenment is Yod-Heh-Shin-Vav-Heh, not Jesus Christ. Nothing present-day Christians spin about their idol is factual in my opinion. In the King James Version of the Bible, we get the following quote, how art thou fallen from heaven, O Lucifer, son of the morning? How art thou cut down to the ground, which didst weaken the nations? End quote. Lucifer is representative of the morning star, but in the Hebrew Tanakh, there was no Lucifer. The word used was Hillel, which means praiseworthy. It was merely a translator's error or intentional fallacy which gave us this name Lucifer. There was a Hillel the Elder who lived in the 1st century BCE, around the alleged time of Jesus Christ. Though the quote above could not have been about him, as it was written at least a millennium before, if not longer, so they couldn't have been writing about a person back then who had fallen. Hillel the Elder wouldn't live for many, many years. Now, in the book of Revelations, we get a passage about Jesus coming back. Quote, I, Jesus, have sent mine angel to testify unto you these things in the churches. I am the root and the offspring of David, and the bright and morning star. End quote. So that's from Revelation chapter 22, verse 16. I believe it was the Christian who wrote Revelations that conglomerated Hillel with Jesus via Lucifer, and gave us this hint that if there was a person who was similar to Jesus, it may have been Hillel the Elder, though he was never crucified, nor born from a virgin, nor did any of the miraculous things attributed to Jesus. It is my belief that all of these false stories were created by the early Roman Vatican. They were dealing with warring sects of early Christians and the pagans. So to quell the fighting, I believe it was Constantine adopted Christianity as the new religion, installing the Vatican to bring together leaders from both sides of the fighting and then compromise. Thus, the Lord was born on the winter solstice and died in the spring equinox, etc., etc. The only hole in this theory is where the early Christians got the idol Jesus from. Now that's beyond me, and I haven't read anything that truly explains it. I will add that if you haven't done so, please read Liber 888, Crowley on Christ. Crowley explains better than I how the Jesus created by the Vatican is a conglomerate of several well-known deities, from Krishna as a loving man and avatar of God, to Osiris, the dying and reborn god, to Dionysus, the wine god, etc., etc. So that's Jesus. I don't believe it has anything to do with an actual person. It is merely a bunch of mythologies wrapped up into one. Now, of course, it doesn't matter whether he was real or not. The act of belief in him is what makes him real, gives his figure power. Anyone with enough confidence and magical aptitude can create a deity. Pouring as much energy into a figure as the Christians have done to Jesus makes an egregore. It's just unfortunate that all of the cultural beliefs mandated upon one who worships Jesus. Those things are the real problem. If Christians could get past their racism, homophobia, and misogyny, it probably wouldn't be so bad. Besides that, even Thelemites can work with Jesus if they so choose. His baby form, after all, is similar to the crowned and conquering child, even Harpocrates in some ways. And Jesus in Revelations coming back, furious with the sword, sounds an awful lot like Rahor Kui. Were a Christian just to open their mind enough to glance at the magician's tables, it's only a hop, skip, and a jump to the Lima. Enough of that. Letter C continues, quote, it would be better for you to get a copy of the Equinox of the Gods and study it. The great work is the uniting of opposites. It may mean the uniting of the soul with God, of the microcosm with the macrocosm, of the female with the male, of the ego with the non-ego, or whatnot. By love under will, one refers to the fact that the method in every case is love, by which is meant the uniting of opposites as above stated, such as hydrogen and chlorine, sodium and oxygen, and so on. Any reaction whatever, any phenomenon, is a phenomenon of love, as you will understand when I come to explain to you the meaning of the word point event. But love has to be under will, if it is to be properly directed. You must find your true will and make all your actions subservient to the one great purpose, end quote. So I've spoken a lot about all of these things on this channel, and way too many times already. Opposites obliterate each other, creating a third thing. If you put will into that mix, you unite yourself with some external thing by making an action with it, and if it's intentional, and if the outcome is what you desired, magic. In the future, I'm sure we'll go over all of this again, but for now, that's enough. Continuing, quote, Ra-Hor is the sun god, Tahuti is the Egyptian Mercury, Kefra is the sun at midnight, end quote. I was going to skip past this short sentence, but I'll make a note quickly. So the Lima is a solar phallic religion. Thus, the sun is our primary vehicle of worship. The sun follows the path called Diocel, rotating around the earth from east to the south, west, and north before rising again in the east. These 4 stations are also very important in all forms of occultism and correspond with the 4 elements. East is air, south is fire, west is water, north is earth. The sun personified by our central Thelemic deity is Ra Kuim. Thus were these 4 stations of the sun, each given their own personification. See Liber Resh, which I have a video about on this channel. Crowley also mentions that Tahuti is Mercury. Mercury is the closest planet to the sun, and because of that, the ancients personified it as the Logos, the messenger of the highest deity, the sun. Its path around the sun is the shortest because it is so close, and so Mercury was given the attribute of speed. Mercury goes around the sun much quicker than any other planet because it's so close, so its path is shorter. So it appears to be very fast. So deities like Hermes or Roman Mercury tend to have speed as one of their general attributes. Letter C continues, quote, "About your problems, what I have to do is try to teach you to think clearly. You will be immensely stimulated by having all of the useless trimmings stripped from your thinking apparatus. For instance, I don't think you know the first principles of logic. You apparently take up a more or less Christian attitude, but at the same time, you like very much the idea of karma. You cannot have both." End quote. So really quick, very important, especially in higher grades of AA, is all of the philosophers, from Descartes to Kant to Plato, Berkeley. Any philosopher is very important, especially in the higher grades. So logic, critical thinking are definitely forms of philosophy. Look into those if you haven't. I'll do some talks on different philosophies at another time. Also on the above quote, I would like to know what Mackie had written, which prompted Crowley to say this. That she needs to have the trimming stripped from her thinking apparatus, and that she takes up a Christian attitude, but also wants to have the idea of karma. I mean, ordinarily I would somewhat disagree with that last part. I hold that you could take any idea from any pre-existing system of attainment and fine-tune it to your own practice. So if you like the idea of confession as a form of released venting therapy, and admitting to the universe what you feel you've done wrong, like you haven't done your will when you had the opportunity, and you find a trustworthy, holy person to take that weight off your shoulders and talk it through. I find that aspect of confession to be, quite helpful. I also like karma, so why can't you have both? So I would like to know what he had seen in her letter, and by talking to her, that she might have some kind of paradox going on, that I'm just not aware of what it is, what prompted him to say that to her. But I do hold that you could take any idea from any pre-existing system of attainment and fine-tune it to your own practice. However, if there is indoctrination from outdated ideologies which are affecting the way one thinks or acts, that outdated idea must be sought out and uprooted completely. So, to an extent, it's valid. I just want to know what she had written that prompted Crowley to say that. So we're going to continue by skipping ahead, just noting from the skipped paragraphs that words have power. Often we use words as we've heard others use words, yet we sometimes don't realize the full depth of what we are saying. This is especially important when using a term to define something practical, ritually practical, spiritually practical in one's attainment, or choosing a word for a ritual. Besides merely looking up the definition, also look up the etymology of the word you plan on using. Root syllables carry deep connotations, thus they have power which we may only be unconsciously aware, but that will affect us down the road. Now there's an entire chapter dedicated to etymology, also in the Book of Thought, that I'll probably draw off of that. There's a lot about etymology, so we'll talk about that at a later time. So let's just continue with the next paragraph of this letter. Quote, "Then again, you ask me questions like, what is purity? That could be answered in a dozen different ways, and you must understand what is meant by a universe of discourse. If you asked me, is this sample of chloride of gold a pure sample? I can answer you. You must understand the value of precision in speech. I could go on rambling about purity and selflessness for years, and no one would be a penny the better." End quote. So one thing to note with Crowley, when he's writing, he's choosing his words very carefully. In addition, some words he uses have altered meanings altogether. As one goes through all of his books and diaries, they eventually become acquainted with his way of using words and come to fully understand what he is saying. But for newcomers, be very careful with interpreting what Crowley is saying. Little Essays Towards Truth is a great book, and it kind of explains what I mean here. When Crowley uses the word chaste in AA oaths, he's not meaning chastity in a sexual way like how the Christians define chastity. No, he means remaining fully dedicated to and full of reverence for their great work. Funny enough, I learned this lesson by misinterpreting what Crowley wrote when he used the word chaste when I took my probationer oath. And I interpreted it as refraining from sex for the year of probation, especially for the last month. And I was fully willing to remain celibate for the entirety of my probation. It had been like a month or a month and a week when I decided to actually ask my teacher at that time about the term, and I explained what I was doing, only to get the response, and this is what the teacher had said back to me: No, it's Crowley and Thelema. Chaste means towards one's work. Get a copy of Little Essays Towards Truth. So after that, we both had a good laugh, and I immediately went home, and I took care of business, to say the least. So be careful with the words that Crowley's using. Another example of this is in the Gnostic Mass, Liber 15, about the priestess. He says a virgin should play the role. Now again, this refers to being fully committed to their role as a priestess. Virgin as having no blemish against their station. So we're nearing the end of this video, as up next is a postscriptum section. So let's get to it. Quote, P.S. Or rather, I did not want to dictate this bit. Your ideas about the OTO remind me of some women's idea of shopping. You want to maul about the stock and then walk out with a proud, glad smile. No. Do you really think I should muster all the distinguished people alive for your inspection and approval? The affiliation clause in our Constitution is a privilege, a courtesy to a sympathetic body. Were you not a Mason or a co-Mason, you would have to be proposed and seconded, and then examined by savage inquisitors, and then, probably, thrown out onto the garbage heap. Well, no, it's not as bad as that, but we certainly don't want anybody who chooses to apply. Would you do it yourself if you were on the committee of a club? The OTO is a serious body, engaged on a work of a cosmic scope, end quote. So let me pause here before the final paragraph. I had my falling out with OTO years ago, and I'm not going to air mine or their dirty laundry on this channel. I will say about this quote, I do believe that what Crowley saw as the OTO back then, what he saw was closer to Freemasonry, and thus probably more serious, more upper class attitude, I guess you could say. Save probably for in California towards the end of his life, where there was no oversight by anyone who had notable attainment. Thus you had leaders like Wilfred Smith or Jack Parsons, who were probably the highest ranking members of Agape Lodge, and were both cuckoo, from out of control egos, and using plenty of drugs, and doing rituals they probably half understood and that were making them go a little crazy. So that said, I do believe Crowley wanted OTO to be very respectable and have an air of sophistication, and to be very selective on who they initiated. And then in recent years, I've noticed that members seem to want to have more numbers, being willing to initiate almost anyone, and this almost always leads to a mentality of quantity over quality. In addition, what Crowley wished for OTO and what it became today, I think, are very different. And I don't know if he would recognize the order. Now, whether that's good or bad, I'll hold my tongue, as it no longer involves me. Though I do wonder what he would think about their changing of the Book of the Law, aligning themselves with Outer College, and all of the changes Outer College made so that it's not really recognizable as a lineage in its present state. Be careful joining any order. Not only should you read everything available that they've published, as well as consider if the people you will call brothers and sisters are people you actually want to be around. But consider also what the karma the order you are joining has, as you're binding your soul to that karma. Besides that, initiation is no light matter. If you get an initiator who's worth their salt, and if they can do it correctly, someone capable of controlling the forces, it'll cause a whirlwind in your life, pushing you to what you need to fix internally. And how often do people resist such character changes? You have to be ready for that and much more. Keep that in mind. Don't just join something because Crowley wrote OTO in a book and you think that that's nostalgic and cool. Good luck if that's your attitude. It's not going to work well for you, probably. Just be very careful what you do and what your motives are and the people that you're going to call brothers and sisters. Final paragraph, quote, "You should question yourself. What can I contribute? Secrets. There is one exception to what I have said about publishing everything. That is, the ultimate secret of the OTO. This is really too dangerous to disclose. But the safeguard is that you could not use it if you knew it unless you were an advanced adept. And you would not be allowed to go so far unless we were satisfied that you were sincerely devoted to the great work. See 1 star in sight. True, the Black Brothers could use it, but they would only destroy themselves. Love is the law, love under will, for eternally, 666. End quote. First off, when joining an order, it's a good thing to consider what you can bring to that order. This can probably help you a lot and make your sincerity live through your actions. On the secrets, in my opinion, they're misogynistic at best. Magic books have been published ad nauseum. Sex magic books have been published ad nauseum. And if you get a Delamite teacher worth their salt in any teaching order, they'll teach you everything you need to know about sex magic. So, there you go. Crowley himself publishes all of the secrets of OTO quite openly in many of his books. So if you're serious and a committed student, without even an ounce of critical thinking skills, you should be able to puzzle them out once you've gone through all his literature. On not being able to misuse the secrets, this is partly true, I would think. A novice who understands little to nothing can use magic to wreak havoc in their own life all they want, but an adept is bound to do their will. A master even more so. The further along you are, the tighter one's oaths become. By the time one has the ability to actually use the secrets of OTO, they will be at a point where their magic will not work save for when they use it to do their will. Therefore, these things cannot be misused. So there's kind of a catch-22. You have to be at a high enough internal spiritual grade level, whether you're in an order or you attain that on your own, in which case you'll have bound yourself pretty tightly by getting to that point, so you won't be able to misuse magic. So you have to be at that point before you could use those quote-unquote secrets. Once you get there, you're not going to be able to misuse those things. So there is kind of a little safeguard built into them, which is pretty cool. On the Black Brothers using them, but that it would destroy them. Well, let's say that they refuse change, or allowing their egos to meld into the all, and that this magic is primarily used for absorption into the infinite. Thus, them using it would create such an intense internal conflict, they would probably go mad. So, I suppose that's the best way I can say that, yeah, they probably can use it, but it would most likely cause a big internal struggle within them. They probably wouldn't feel very good doing it. So, thus ends our video on letter C. Love is the law, love under will. Catch y'all in the next one.